Hope you've had a good work week, Central Georgia. As we head into the weekend, the big and the main story is we have elected to issue a weather impact alert here for Sunday morning. So that is going to be the time frame that we have the potential for maybe something of the way of winter weather. So the main impact, we are still trying to fine tune the specifics, but we have the potential for maybe a wintry mix, even possibly a few flurries, but it's mainly going to be for south and southeast central Georgia. That's where the most confidence does lie in potential winter weather impact. So what you need to do is stay up to date. I know we always say this with every single weather impact alert, but it is more crucial and more emphasis on staying up to date as we go across the course of this weekend. As of the time of this recording, we're about 48 hours from this potential winter weather event, so we are going to continue to see drastic changes. Things can and will change, and they change more so with winter weather events more than anything here in central Georgia. And if you do have any plans farther down to the south and the southeast, but just anywhere in central Georgia, you want to make sure that you drive with a bit of caution, because if we are to have something in the way of frozen precipitation, whether that is just a wintry mix, whether that is a few flurries that try to stick for just a few hours, that could have some implications on the roads. And that is obviously something that we don't see every day. And that is the main reasoning for this weather impact alert. And we're not issuing it for a widespread blizzard. We are not issuing a weather impact alert for something like we did see as of last January, almost exactly a year ago this weekend. So this is just the potential for maybe a bit of freezing rain, maybe a bit of sleet, maybe even a bit of a few flurries that try to stick to the ground. But we'll go over everything that we are seeing specifically as of right now. We just want you to have a little bit of caution as you go into Sunday morning plans, specifically while you are going to be on the roads. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of recap from this past work week. First and foremost, before we get into the nitpicky of it all, we did have one day that we recorded some rain, only about 5/100ths of an inch of rain back on January 14th. And the total so far this month, just under 1 inch. So we are about a quarter of the way there in terms of reaching our average January rainfall. Now we do have some rainfall chances to talk about as we go across the course of this weekend as well. Maybe that will add a couple tenths of an inch to the totals that we've seen so far, but we definitely could use some rain as the latest update of the drought monitor this past week expanded the severe drought that was present in west central Georgia all the way across the east central Georgia and portions all the way over across the state line of Georgia into South Carolina. So basically, it's a line from Thomaston to Forsyth, Macon, all the way over to Wrightsville, and areas farther down to the south in this orange shade, which just means that south central Georgia needs some rain and needs some hydration a little bit more than areas in north central Georgia, which have had their fair share of more impressive rainfall totals with the last couple of systems that have come through. So they still remain in a moderate drought. Not to say that they couldn't use some rain exactly up in areas like Milledgeville, Eatonton, up into Gray, maybe even Jasper County and Monticello. But that's where things do currently stand. We definitely could use some rain. And as we go across the course of January into this weekend, the big story has been spring-like weather as we kicked off the first month of 2026, especially the end of last week where we did see Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even all the way back to last Tuesday where we had 70 and 80 degree high temperatures. 2 days that we did flirt with the records. We matched a record last Friday at 79, 77 broke a record last Wednesday. Well, now we've entered a colder stretch, and that is going to continue to persist throughout this weekend. We now have 3 days in the month of January that have been below average for your high temperatures, and we are looking to add maybe about 3, 4, maybe even 5 days more onto that total before this cold spell finally comes to an end. All right, now let's get into future view. Let's plan out everything you need to know according to this weekend. 5 p.m. later on your Friday evening, crystal clear, a bit of an uptick in the winds coming out of the south. And as we go overnight into Friday, or going into later on Friday night into overnight and early morning on Saturday, things begin to change. First and foremost, we are going to have a frontal boundary that's going to bring an increase in cloud cover, and along with it, some scattered light and maybe even some moderate rain showers early in the morning on Saturday, making its entrance into our north and northwesternmost counties. That rain does continue to scatter out a whole lot more as we go into around 8 a.m., but still plenty of clouds as you walk out the door on Saturday morning. And then as we go into the afternoon hours, the farther south and southeast that you live, you are going to hold on to a few of those rain showers into the afternoon, a little bit later than areas like Upson County, Lamar, Monroe, Jasper counties. So that's something to be on the lookout for. You could have a bit of a dreary atmosphere on your Saturday afternoon. Otherwise, if you do dodge the rain, what you should expect throughout your Saturday afternoon is a partly cloudy to a mostly cloudy afternoon with some temperatures that are going to be close to average for this time of year. So finally getting a little bit of a warm up as we head into the beginning of your weekend. But we are going to continue to keep an eye out for these rain chances down to the south and the southeast, because it looks like some of them could go as far as the nighttime hours, really late evening, early nighttime, right there around 8 p.m. on Saturday. Then we transition into Sunday. So remember, a frontal boundary is going to be bringing in these rain chances. We will have cooler and drier air behind that frontal boundary, and it's going to try to usher in. But it does still kind of look like the frontal boundary kind of stalls over central Georgia as we go into overnight and early morning into Sunday. Still your fair share of widely scattered showers, some pockets of steady and maybe even some heavy rain at points. And then around 5 a.m., it does look like maybe the temperatures drop down enough to start to transition some of this line of rain into more so of a wintry mix, maybe even a few spotty snow flurries starting around 5 a.m. So I think 4 to 5 a.m. going to be that window of when temperatures begin to flirt with that 32-degree mark as we go early into Sunday morning, as we transition more and more farther into the morning hours, right there around 8 a.m. That's getting into the time where typically day by day we do start to kick off our warming trend closer to the 8 a.m. hour, and you can see a good amount of widespread frozen precipitation. So these purplish blue colors are going to indicate something in the way of snowfall showers. However, as you transition more into this line of pink that you do see, that's more so of a wintry mix. So we are right there on the line of seeing something in the way of frozen precipitation. This is our high resolution model, the graph model that we use each and every day, day in and day out for Future View when talking about your short-term forecast. And it does give us a good depiction that the farther south and southeast that you live, very similar to those rain chances that linger a little bit later in the day on Saturday afternoon, that is going to be the best probability that you have of seeing something in the way of wintry precipitation, whether that's a wintry mix or whether that's going to be maybe even a few flurry showers. So far down to the south and the southeast, we have seen this trend a little bit farther up to the north. As the first couple of model runs of the graph model, it showed all of these colors down to the south and southeast of us. It wasn't impacting central Georgia whatsoever, but the latest couple of model runs have pushed it back up to the north and the northwest just a tad bit, but really only impacting our southeasternmost counties throughout the morning hours on Sunday. So this is 10 a.m. right here, and we'll go ahead and go all the way to the noon hour, where almost all the cloud cover and all of the frozen or liquid precipitation, whatever form it does take, is getting pushed out of the area because there will be a secondary frontal boundary behind the first one that begins to come in on Saturday, and that one is going to usher out all of this moisture, all of this cloud cover, set up some breezy conditions. But pay attention to this. There is plenty of sunshine and clearing in the skies as we go into the afternoon hours on Sunday. I do have temperatures forecast somewhere in the low to the mid 40s for high temperatures on Sunday afternoon. If you're searching for warm weather, obviously that's definitely not what I'm talking about, but those numbers are good enough to be well above freezing temperature, and it looks like we will have an ample window of sunshine heading into the afternoon that will allow for any impacts that are down at the surface to begin to melt if it is of the frozen nature early on Sunday morning. So I don't anticipate any impacts as we go from Sunday evening into Sunday night, because right after sunset on Sunday, we're actually forecasting the temperatures to drop back down below freezing temperature very, very quickly. However, I think for an ample window in the afternoon, it will eliminate anything in the way of some surface trouble that you may have with some frozen precipitation. But if some of it does not melt, you still have some standing water at the surface as you go into overnight Sunday into early morning on Monday. That will definitely freeze back over. So be on the lookout for maybe some of those puddles or just some slick spots that could remain down at the surface as you go into Monday morning. But I have little confidence in seeing too many of those having some implications on your forecast. Now, this is where we've really been scratching our head all morning long, because we can zoom in Future View, throw up some temperature plots as we go into Sunday morning, and take a look at this. When that frozen precipitation starts to pop up down to the south and the southeast, this is the same model run we just looked at, just zoomed in a bit, and we have the specific temperatures outlined for certain areas of central Georgia. How about this? 37s, 39 all the way down to the south and the southeast. Those numbers are far too warm for anything in the way of snow showers. Now, it may result in a bit of a wintry mix, maybe something in the way of some possible sleet and such, but these numbers are a good deal above freezing. We're talking 5 to 7 degrees. It does look like those numbers try to drop down a little bit as we go into right there around 8 a.m. when we should hit that morning low temperature. But if you're looking for some 30s, some 31s, some 32-degree marks, those are found up to the north and the northwest. So it does look like that cooler air behind the frontal boundary does usher into our north and northwesternmost counties at first. But it still takes some time to get down here to the south and the southeast. So right now it is going to be all dependent on how cold we do get as we go into Sunday morning. If we see temperatures like this, I wouldn't even be confident in anything in the way of snow. Maybe a little bit of a wintry mix having some implications on the road, but overall these temperatures are going to be too warm to produce anything in the way of wintry precipitation, and definitely not lining up to what you do see down there to the south and the southeast until maybe Vidalia pops down to 33 degrees. But it is worth noting that this future view model, the graph model, is very reluctant to drop those numbers below the 30-degree mark. The colder and colder you get, it is very reluctant to report some accurate numbers. As of the last week or so, even as of Friday morning, it was reporting low temperatures in the mid-20s when all the other models were saying closer to the 20-degree mark, maybe even down into the upper teens. And that is what happened. Upper teens and low 20s were the actual lows on Friday morning, not the mid-20s like the graph did say. So we'll take that with a grain of salt, but luckily the graph model isn't the only model that we do have. We're going to go ahead and show you the whole model montage with everything that we are looking at. Here's the GFS model. Now, as of Thursday, this was the most bullish on widespread snow showers. It even had 2 to 3 inches of accumulation of snow all across central Georgia. Well, here's where it stands as of Friday morning. Now, we are going to continue to see fluctuation, but it does say something that the model most confident in snow is kind of backing off. Starting things off as a wintry mix starting around 3 a.m. Looks like we could see a good mix of that freezing rain, that sleet, maybe a little bit of snow. So a good mix of just rain and snow in general across central Georgia, really through that early morning time frame, maybe 6 to 7 to 8 a.m. And then as you go farther and farther into the morning and into the afternoon hours, that frozen precipitation starts to transition into more of a wintry mix and eventually just a rain as those numbers do warm up as we go into Sunday. Overall, this model is not looking as impressive in terms of widespread snowfall as it did look as of Thursday. But remember, the GFS is one of the models that we're not most reliant on when it does come to something of the way of wintry precipitation. It's more so the European model. If you caught this extended forecast yesterday, I was referring to the GFS as the Cleveland Browns, typically one of the teams that doesn't have too many wins throughout the year, but on occasion, the Cleveland Browns can make the playoffs. So on occasion, the GFS does nail the forecast, hits it out of the park. But typically, the European model is your more consistent model when it does come to predicting these wintry weather events. The European model, think of them more so as the Pittsburgh Steelers, consistent each and every year, right there around 500 or above 500. And here's what the European model does say, because it didn't pick up on much as of Thursday, but actually now it is picking apart a good amount of some widespread snow showers, especially farther down to the south and the southeast. But that's one thing that we are becoming more and more confident with as we continue to look at each and every one of these models. The farther south and southeast that you live, you are going to have the greater chances of something in the form of wintry weather. Just how far north and northwest it goes, that still remains a bit up in the air. If we go this European route right here, we could even see a couple flurries in the Macon area. And like I said, the European typically is more reliable, but these aren't the best resolution, meaning they can't pick apart the localized impact. So obviously, these are very widespread shades of color that you do see, and it's not really indicative of kind of fine-tuning where the edge of that line does exist. That's why we trust the graph model more, because it's more of a higher resolution and it picks apart which specific areas are going to see which specific impacts. But the European remains of the same idea that the GFS did. As we go farther and farther throughout the morning into the afternoon hours, a lot of that frozen precipitation does begin to melt as the temperatures do begin to get warmer. And then this is out of here as we go farther into the afternoon and the evening hours. Now, here's one more model to throw at you, the NAM model. And this model we've had the least confidence in over the last 24 hours, really over the last 2 days since we started looking at this event. 9 a.m. on Sunday, wintry mix starts to pop up. And then as we go into the afternoon hours, maybe a few pockets of even some snow showers. I don't buy this for 1 second, because as we go farther and farther into the afternoon, temperatures are only going to get warmer and warmer and warmer. So Obviously, as we go farther along into the day on Sunday, I do have expectations that the conditions are just going to warm up, that are going to be really too warm for producing anything in the way of frozen precipitation, because right now what we're seeing, temperatures are going to be right there on the line of that 32-degree mark, that magic number. So I think that as we go farther along into the day, even if we keep the cloud cover in the forecast, we are still going to see some numbers that are far too warm to continue to produce frozen precipitation, like the NAM does say, farther along into the afternoon. But then all that is out of the picture as we go into the early evening hours, according to the NAM, which I definitely do buy as we go into 6 p.m. later on. So basically, let's take everything that I just showed you with all those model runs, and let's break it down into a concise prediction that we can give you. Now, this is going to be as of Friday morning. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you are watching this forecast, maybe sometime Friday evening, going into Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, it's very likely going to be out of date. There's a likelihood that it could remain of the same idea, but you're going to want to continue to stay up to date over the course of this weekend if you are keeping your fingers crossed for maybe something in the way of winter weather, or you are trying to nail down how this is going to impact any of your weekend plans. So as of Friday morning, low confidence still in the amounts and the specific impacts on Sunday morning. So what that means is we're still trying to nail down whether this is going to be of rain variety, this is going to be of the wintry mix, freezing rain, sleet, or this is going to be straight up snow showers. So we're still trying to nail down those specific impacts. And until we can finally fine-tune those specific impacts, we can't really get a good idea about the specific amounts of those impacts. But we will go ahead and try to give you a rough prediction after this. But there is a lot higher confidence in the potential impacts being in South and Southeast Central Georgia. So the confidence has decreased farther up in the northern portion of the state. It does look like areas down in South and Southeast Central Georgia, even South Georgia and Southeast Georgia, areas outside of Central Georgia do have some fairly good confidence in something in the way of some potential winter weather. So the impact is really looking like more so I'm leaning towards a wintry mix, just with those temperatures being right there around freezing temperature, maybe just slightly above them. But we still do have the potential for maybe some light snow showers that could lead to some accumulation. And the biggest impact we would see from anything in the way of wintry precipitation would be that the roads could be hazardous. So this is where things do stand as of Friday morning. I know I wish I could give you more of a specific forecast, but the models have continued to be all over the place. They're coming into better agreement on at least the location of where the impacts may be, but we're still trying to fine-tune those specific impacts and the amounts. Winter weather in the South is a very hard thing to predict because a lot of different things have to come together in order to produce kind of that perfect storm of events like we did have as of last year. So your weekend outlook, going to be a chilly afternoon on Friday, but definitely not as cold as what you did feel on Thursday afternoon, with wind chills in the mid-30s all afternoon long. 30% chance of rain on Saturday. We did have a morning tag on this for a while. I elected to take that off because some areas are going to see the rain chances more so in the afternoon and the evening, and some areas are going to see those rain chances earlier on in the day. So the farther west and northwest that you live, you have a better chance of seeing that rain on Saturday during the morning hours. If you live down to the south and the southeast, you have a better chance of seeing those rain showers later on in the day, the afternoon and into the evening hours. And then we could see that rain go overnight Saturday into early morning on Sunday, but then the question mark is wintry mix, something of the snow variety, or just a very cold rain. My forecasted low right now is 32 degrees, so that is right there on freezing temperature. You have numbers of the 32-degree mark. Yes, it can snow, and you can even see things of the wintry precipitation variety when the numbers are slightly above freezing temperature. But given the fact that this is as low as I expect the numbers to go as of the beginning of this weekend, I do have little confidence in a lot of those impacts lingering. So a lot of things are not going to stick to the ground if your actual temperatures are still right there just above freezing. So obviously your surface temperatures are very likely going to be of similar value, somewhere right there around 32 or maybe just slightly above. But we are only at that 32-degree mark really for a slim window in the early morning hours. After we get to around, say, 9 to 10, 11 a.m., I do expect the warm-up to begin, and I'm forecasting a high in the mid-40s. I could see this number going down, maybe into the low to the mid-40s. However, I do expect numbers to be well above freezing as we do go into Sunday afternoon. So I did say we'll try to fine-tune some specific amounts. If we go according to what the graph model just said, We are picking apart some totals of about maybe a quarter of an inch farther down to the south and the southeast in central Georgia. I mean, this is the very far southeast. This is barely portions of Wilcox County, most of Telfair, portions of Wheeler, portions of Montgomery, and portions of Toombs County. That's it. No one else is recording anything in the way of total snowfall accumulations, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't see maybe a couple of flurries, but we're not looking at anything past the possible accumulation of maybe a few flurries of snow. And like I said, temperatures are going to warm up very quickly as we go throughout the day on Sunday, so those accumulations are not going to last very long. Now, in terms of the rainfall, which we did allude to that we could definitely use some, not looking at much in the way of rainfall either, but once again, areas down to the east and the southeast do have the higher likelihood of seeing something in the way of liquid precipitation. Along with that, that is going to be of the frozen precipitation variety. And in terms of the winds, that might be something that you are concerned about. It is a 3-day weekend. Many of you may have some outdoor plans. Well, you should expect some breezy conditions throughout your Friday evening and nighttime plans. Gustier winds early in the morning on Saturday. That breeze subsides just a little bit, and then we start to see some gusts build back in early on Sunday morning and continuing to be present pretty widespread as we go into Sunday afternoon. All in all, not too much of a concern as compared to the potential for that wintry weather. And now we'll zoom through the rest of your extended forecast. Monday looks nice and dry. Tuesday, we might even have another frontal boundary come through, but after the ones that passed through this weekend, we're not going to have anything in the way of moisture to work with. So it's just going to kind of reinforce that cooler and drier air in your forecast. Then next Wednesday, that's going to be the day that we finally kick off another bit of a warming trend, which I'm sure many of you are going to be excited about because it has been blistering cold for the last couple of days, and it will continue to be blistering cold well into the beginning of next week. Now we go into next Thursday. Sometime maybe in the afternoon and evening hours, we could see our next rainmaker potentially moving in. And then we go into Friday morning, where it does look like the GFS says that that rainmaker will be nice and widespread, and we could have some showers and cloud cover lingering around into the afternoon hours. So the end of next week, that's going to be the next time frame that you'll want to look out for the next rainmaker that could have some implications for any of your outdoor plans. But I did mention it will continue to be blistering cold. Here are your morning low temperatures. Monday, MLK Day, 23, but then as you head back to work and head back to school, also another low of 23. And like I mentioned, maybe sometime Tuesday, we have one of those invisible fronts come through. Doesn't have any moisture to work with, so it's not going to produce anything in the way of rainfall, but it will reinforce that cold and dry air. 21 degrees for a morning low on Wednesday, but then we begin the warming trend as we go back up close to freezing temperature on Thursday morning, which is warmer, which is closer to average, but that is still mighty, mighty cold as you head out the door next Thursday morning. And your afternoon high temperatures, I don't expect the next best feeling day besides Saturday afternoon, which we are forecasting highs right there near the 60-degree mark. But we are going to be scattered about the 40s and the 50s for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And then finally, we get back into the 60s next Thursday. And I do anticipate a warming trend, maybe pretty close to the mid-60s later on next weekend, which is slightly above average, but not going to be as warm as that spring-like stretch of weather we were talking about at the beginning of January. So I think that's going to be kind of a sweet spot, hopefully something to look forward to as we head into next weekend. And speaking of those numbers, it does look like we might have a slight probability of seeing some above normal numbers during that January 23rd to the 29th period, but overall, most of central Georgia looks to hang around average, and it does look like we might receive our fair share of rainmakers in that extended forecast, as we do have areas to the north and the northwest of us with above normal probabilities of seeing maybe more than what you normally see on average for that extended period of weather. And looking ahead, MLK Day, that's going to be in 3 days. That will be on Monday. Many of you probably already know that because you know you have work and school off that day. The Super Bowl kicking off in 23 days, and that's going to set up a very eventful week as you head into the middle of February. Just 6 days after the Super Bowl, so that is going to be a Saturday. Go ahead and make notes, fellas. 29 days until Valentine's Day, so Valentine's Day will be on a Saturday. No excuse not to take your special someone out to a very nice dinner or maybe even a bit of a picnic. Maybe we can work on some of those temperatures being pretty pleasant feeling for Valentine's Day. And then 2 days after that is President's Day. That might mark another 3-day weekend for you as we go into the middle of February. So just around a month away from President's Day, and then we'll continue to tell you what's up ahead past that as we head well into March. So here's a look at your weather impact alert one last time. It is going to be for Sunday morning. It is not going to be for your rain chances tomorrow. It is not going to be for Sunday afternoon. It's not going to be for Sunday evening or even going into a blistering cold morning on Monday. It's winter. We know it's cold. Your weather impact alert is solely for the potential impact of a wintry mix, maybe even a few flurries farther down to the south and the southeast. That's where our confidence remains the highest as of right now of seeing potential winter weather here in central Georgia. So what you need to do, like I mentioned, if you are watching this maybe on Saturday afternoon, it is going to be out of date. Make sure that you're staying up to date with the latest forecast because things can and will change according to these winter weather systems. We see it all the time down here in the deep south. Drive with caution on Sunday morning, especially down in our south and southeasternmost counties, because if we do see anything stick for a brief moment in time during that morning time frame, it obviously is going to create some slick conditions on the roads, and we are not used to driving with anything of the frozen nature on the roads, except if you got some practice as of last year's snowmaker that we did see. But speaking of last year, this weather impact alert is not sounding the alarms for an event like we did see last year. That was unprecedented, 9 inches of snow down in Crisp County, most areas getting somewhere from around 3 to maybe 5 inches of snow. We are not forecasting that whatsoever. If you even get an accumulation of snow, I think it's going to be a select few spots, and it's only going to be a couple tenths of an inch. So we are not going to get near the amount of snow that we did see as of last year, and I'm not really even confident in seeing much in the way of snow. I have more confidence in that potential wintry mix, so freezing rain, maybe even a little bit of sleet to create a bit of a nasty environment for your Sunday morning. But like I mentioned, as conditions clear out, we get some sunshine, we get some warmer temperatures later on in the day on Sunday afternoon. It is going to melt anything that does try to stick to the surface or anything of that frozen precipitation variety. So that's where things currently stand. Higher confidence in south and southeast central Georgia seeing potential winter weather. However, the specific impacts, we are still trying to fine tune that. That's why you are going to see the words potential or possible floated around, because we still need a little bit more time in order to fine tune this forecast. The National Weather Service is reciprocating the same exact language that I'm using right now. There is low confidence in the specific amounts and what specific impacts that we are going to see. That's why it remains crucial that you stay up to date over the course of this weekend so you know what to expect as you go into Sunday morning. But I'm not expecting you to walk out the door to a winter wonderland. You may get lucky and have a little bit of white on the ground the farther south and southeast that you do live, but that's as of Friday's knowledge. This is very likely going to change. Like I mentioned, this prediction very likely will change as we go into Saturday, so continue to stay up to date with that latest forecast. All right, I think that's enough word salad for you in terms of this potential winter weather event. Overall, keep your fingers crossed if you are hoping for snow. In all likelihood, we typically don't see it on an average year here in central Georgia. I know definitely from experience. Last year was pretty unprecedented, and again, we are not forecasting that whatsoever. Just continue to stay updated with your weather team as we go across the course of this weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back next week for a look at your extended forecast on Monday.